But I didn't do it by my body, I just looked at his front body. So I couldn't be more accurate.
No, his primary body.
Yeah.
That's how we feel, right?
I'm going to try. Can everyone hear me all right? If I
Yes.
speak up? All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. My name's Tim. I'm a member of the Zeeland Area Action Committee. For anyone not familiar with our group, we are a group of Zeeland area residents that came together early 2023 because we wanted to become more informed and involved in our democracy at the local level. So we're very excited to partner with League of Women Voters to hold this event tonight. If you'd like to learn more about ZAC and the work we're doing in District 4, feel free to grab me or any of us in the lovely ZAC shirts here this evening. And with that, I'll introduce Paula and Barb with League of Women Voters. Thank you.
All right, and roll through our slides. Can y'all hear me okay without a microphone?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm Paula Edwards, this is Barb, and we're both with the League of Women Voters. I am co-lead with Tina over here for Voter Services Committee, and Barb is our lead president. But I wanted to find out a little bit about who's in the room here. How many people are here from ZAC? Quite a few in the back, okay, and up through the middle here. How about League of Women Voters? How many have we got? Just a few from League of Women Voters. How many people are not affiliated with either organization? Quite a few. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you all for coming. Does everybody vote in Ottawa County? Okay, because we are very focused on Ottawa County here, so that's good. Do I have any more questions for people? Oh, general awareness of your new voting rights. How many people are generally or pretty familiar, generally aware or pretty familiar of your new voting rights? About half the room. Okay, all right. Well, fantastic. Hopefully we'll be able to answer a lot of your questions. And so I'm going to hand it off to Barb to give you an overview.
Okay, I've been told I need to use the mic because I don't have a loud voice. So if you can't hear me, let me know. But first of all, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the League of Women Voters. The League is over 100 years old. It was founded in 1920 to help women who had just gained the right to vote learn more about the voting process and elections. And for that more than 100 years, that's been the mission of the League, to educate voters and to encourage civic engagement. The League is a nonpartisan political organization. We do not endorse candidates, we do not oppose candidates, but we want to help voters learn about the candidates. So we hold candidate forums, meet and greets. We have our website, Vote 411, where candidates can answer questions and their answers are posted on that website. We don't change their answers at all. The membership in the League is open to both men and women of voting age. So if you'd like to learn more about the League, please visit our website or talk to one of us. We'd be happy to tell you more. So today's town hall is going to focus on the new voting rights. They became available to voters in 2024 after the passage of Proposal 2 of 2022. That was about an amendment to our state constitution, so it really cemented the voting rights in the Constitution. Over 60% of the voters approved of the amendment. So we want to think about the voting rights kind of as your voter toolbox. And if you see over here, I brought a tool bag and we've got some tools. So we've got voting rights that we have had for a long time. Those are the tried and true voting rights and the tools you're used to having in your toolbox. But now they are a part of the state constitution. And then we also have some newly enhanced voting rights, like power tools, so that the voting rights that you had now have been improved. And then we also have some brand new voting rights. There's a little tiny robot over there. That's supposed to be an AI saw. Anyway, you get the idea. Okay, so we'll refer to this throughout our presentation. Let's see. So here are a few of the rights that you've already had. And you can see these are your tried and true tools. They're now in the Constitution. We'll talk a little bit more about some of these later. Then you have some enhanced voting rights. For example, the certification of election results was not as clear in the past as it is now. It's been spelled out. Additionally, there have been improvements made to the absentee voting, like permanent mail ballot list and prepaid postage. We'll talk a little bit more about these as well. One of your new voting rights, brand new, is that you now have the opportunity to actually vote early in the election. And also there are new deadlines for military and overseas ballots. We'll talk a little bit more about these as well. The early voting is really exciting. Here's what we'll cover today. And we'll stop after each section so that if you have questions, you can ask the questions after each of those. So Paul is going to take the first one.
All right, so just a quick overview of the fundamental right to vote. And this is something that, of course, we've had for as long as Michigan has been a state, probably. And the difference, as Barb said, is that it is now written into the Constitution. And so there are some, the way you register, I mean, it's really straightforward in terms of your requirements for registering to vote. So you need to be a US citizen. You need to have been a resident of Michigan for at least 30 days. You need to be at least 18 on election day and not incarcerated at the time of voting season, voting day. There are some things that are prohibited from Proposal 2 as well. So no person or legal entity, and a legal entity would be a business or a state agency, for example, can interfere with or unnecessarily burden the fundamental right to vote, either by act of law, so for example, poll taxes and literacy tests and things like that we heard about years ago. Those things are prohibited, as well as harassment, threats, and intimidation. Any Michigan voter can also bring a lawsuit to enforce this right if they find that it is violated. The hotline number we have here is from Promote the Vote, and it's staffed with lawyers in case you do see incidences of harassment or intimidation or something. Any question about the fundamental right to vote before we move on? Nope. So voter identification is the next one. And we have had the same voter ID laws since 1996. So what Prop 2 did was essentially write those same voter ID laws into the Constitution. And so pretty much the same as we've had for a long time. So the kind of ID that you require, these are the acceptable IDs. Michigan driver's license, this is the only one that can be either current or expired. So if you lose your ability to drive and your driver's license expires, you can still use it at the polls to prove who you are. Military photo ID, driver's license or ID from any other state, tribal photo ID, as long as you live in Michigan and are registered in Michigan, your other state ID can work. So tribal photo ID, US passport or federal government issued ID, and then the last two are new with Proposal 2, student ID issued by an educational institution and local government issued ID. So when you go to a polling place, the first thing you'll do is fill out an application to vote. You'll bring that to a poll worker. And then the first question that they'll ask you is, can I see your photo ID? And so you would show them one of those acceptable photo IDs. If you have one, you must show it if you have one with you. There is an exception. If you don't have a photo ID or don't have it with you, then you can sign a form called an affidavit of voter not in possession of picture ID and vote a regular ballot. And signing this form is a legal document. You're signing it under penalty of perjury. So it's a serious form to sign. Any questions about voter ID before we move on? Yes?
How does a person who doesn't have a license or any of those, who doesn't really have a photo ID, like an older person perhaps who stopped driving and all that, how do they get where do they go to get that?
Yeah, where would they go to get, for example, a state ID or a local or government issued ID? Do you know the answer to that, Barb or Tina? Tina knows.
It's Secretary of State.
Secretary of
State's
State.
office.
You can get a Michigan ID whether you, my daughter had to do that before she got her license.
Okay,
Yeah. So,
fantastic, thank you.
yeah.
That's why we have experts in the room. All right, early voting.
So this is one of our new rights. Thanks to the passage of Prop 2, Michigan voters now can engage in real early voting in person. They can cast their ballot just like you would on an election day, only early at an early voting site. So now in Michigan, there are 3 ways to vote. Early voting at an early voting site, voting by absentee ballot, by mail or in person. We'll talk a little bit about that. Or you can vote in person at your polling site on election day. So they have 3 choices about how to vote. Interestingly, you can, I'm going to make sure I'm in the right spot here. With the absentee ballot now, you can fill out your absentee ballot at home, take it to either an early voting site or on election day at your polling place. And you can actually fill or take your ballot and put it in the tabulator. So if you wanted to do that, you would go to the polling place, the poll worker would ask you for your ID, you'd fill out an application for voting, and then you would be able to just take the ballot that you completed at home and put it in the tabulator. In the past, you could go to the election polling place, turn in your absentee ballot, they would spoil the ballot, issue you a new ballot, and you'd have to fill that out right there at the polling place. So now, that's the best of both worlds. You can do your study, fill out your ballot at home when it's your schedule, and then take it in, and you can actually feed it into the tabulator and get the sticker. So early voting must be offered by state or by city or townships for every state and federal election. They have the option to offer early voting for local elections that are not statewide or federal. Ottawa County has decided not to do that. So the experience of early voting is very close to what you'd expect if you were voting at your polling place on election day. So early voting sites, when are they open? They have to be open for 9 consecutive days. So it's starting the Sunday of the 2 weeks before election day. And for Saturday, sorry, thank you. For the entire next week, and then Sunday before election day. They have to be open at least 8 hours a day. They don't have to be consecutive. They can be, they don't have to be. And the locations are set up, and you can find them at that website, michigan.gov/vote. And we also have some handouts and a chart on the table in the back that have the Allegan County and the Ottawa County polling sites and the hours. The municipalities, the townships, and the cities can work together to establish early voting sites. In Allegan County, most of them are at the Township Hall. In Ottawa County, I think we have this on the next slide here. There are 4 early voting sites in Ottawa County. You can see them there: Polkton Township, Grand Haven, Georgetown, and the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services on James Street. Ottawa County voters can go to any of those and vote early, any of those 9 days. Yes?
Why is the Monday before not one of the days
So
instead
they
of
can get ready
Saturday
for
the week
election day.
before? What's that?
So they can prepare for the election the next day. So, let me make sure I have everything in here. So the early voting sites have the same requirements that a polling place would have on election day. They have to be accessible. There has to be an opportunity for the public to observe the election, and they have to maintain all the ballots in a sealed container at the end of the day. So think about this. There's 4 polling places for early voting, but then on election day, you go to your regular polling place. So that can be a little confusing. You need to just kind of remember that it's not always the same. Oops. So what's the difference between early voting and absentee voting? With early voting, you go to the early voting site, just like you would on an election day. Fill out an application to vote, complete your ballot in the privacy booth like you would on election day. With absentee voting, you request your ballot online, by mail, fax, or in person, and then you can also join the permanent mail ballot list, and we'll talk about that later. And then when you get your application, or your ballot, if you're not on the permanent mail ballot list, then you'll need to apply for your absentee ballot each time. But once you get it, then you complete it where you like, when you like. With early voting, you take your ballot and actually feed it into the tabulator. With absentee ballot voting, you return it to your city or clerk. You can mail it in. You can drop it off at a drop box. You can go to an early voting site. You can go to your polling place on election day. So, are there any questions about early voting? Okay. Oh, you don't. What's this?
All right, so this is a new right that we have, and the way Prop 2 helped just make voting more convenient for voters was by providing this permanent mail ballot list. So what is it? So previously voters could sign up, as Barb said, for an application to vote. They would receive an application for an absentee ballot before each election. They send in their application, they receive a ballot, they vote it from home, they turn it in as they wished. But the permanent mail ballot list, you submit one application and they'll put you on the list to receive a ballot for every single election. So it can be a little confusing. There are 2 lists now. So one is the list that we've had for years. How many of you have been on a list to receive ballots? So a lot of people received this one. So this has been available for years, and you receive an application for a ballot, you mail that in, you get your ballot. This new time, this new right allows you to send your application in once, receive the ballot before every election, and both of these are available to all voters with no excuse necessary. So this is maybe not the best choice for some people because you will receive that ballot before every election and ballots cannot be forwarded. So, so we'll talk about that in a minute, but to get on the permanent mail ballot list, with your absentee voter ballot application, there is a place to check the box now. So how many people have checked that box and are now on that permanent list? Quite a few, not everyone. So For people who are like snowbirds or students who are away from home during many election seasons, this may not be the best choice, because what you have to do if you're going to be away from home is contact your clerk and let them know what your temporary address is. And so if you're gone for a few elections in a row, like students might be, that's kind of a hassle because ballots cannot be forwarded, and so you must contact your clerk. So you have to be really deliberate about it. And what do you do if you move? So if you move within the state of Michigan, you need to update your address on that list, because otherwise they'll send the ballot to the wrong address. If you move outside of Michigan and surrender your driver's license, then of course you're no longer eligible to vote in Michigan, and so you will be removed from the list. So you'll be on the list unless one of 5 things happens. Number 1, you submit a request to be removed from the list, and this is the easiest and most straightforward way if you do want to get off the list. Number 2, if you move outside of Michigan and surrender your Michigan driver's license, that will automatically remove you from the list because the Secretary of State's office is very connected with those lists. If you move within the state of Michigan without updating your voter registration address, the ballot will go to the address on file. It'll bounce back to the clerk. The clerk will say, okay, this person must have moved, and you'll have some opportunities to clear that up. If you don't clear that up, they'll remove you from the list. If you're no longer eligible to vote, for example, if you're incarcerated at the time of the election, or if you do not vote for 6 consecutive years, you'll be removed from the list. So the list is secure. To join it, the clerk must confirm who you are, and they do that by comparing signatures, your signature to the signature on file. So any questions about the absentee voter ballot list? Yes?
How far in advance do you have to update your address with the clerk? Like, for example, I have a college student who's at one address for the February and May local elections, but in the fall has no idea what his address is yet. How far in advance do you have to contact the clerk?
Yeah, if you're on that permanent mail ballot list, the ballots go out 40 days before the election. And so he should probably not be on the permanent mail ballot list. Okay, so then I believe it's 2 weeks before the election is. Tina, do you know exactly what that timeline is? To change your address with the clerk in order to have the clerk mail a ballot to the correct address.
Somewhere in there.
I think it's like 2 weeks before the election.
There is a line on your application for an absentee ballot, if you're doing it each time, that gives you an option to put a mailing address. So if you knew the dorm
temporary address,
you could put that in.
Well, like, for example, housing assignments haven't been done for the following school year. So, because I actually called the clerk's office and was giving quite the runaround and trying to how to handle that. So, just trying to get some clarity so that hopefully more students in that predicament could be able to vote.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, if they do want an absentee ballot mailed to them, as Tina said, if they put an application together online, that opportunity is right there, and they can ask for a temporary address. So, unless they want to change their driver's license every time they move, they probably don't want to do that. So, okay, any other questions before we move on? All right, next up is absentee voting improvements.
So this is another of our enhanced, can you hear me? Okay, of the enhanced voting rights. So with absentee voting, some of the improvements are that now, this is really simple, straightforward one. Now the state must pay for return postage, so you don't have to look for stamps. You just put it in there. And then you also now have the right to be notified of issues. And the most common issue is that people don't sign the ballot envelope when they're mailing it back in. So if there are any issues on the absentee ballot, and I said most of them are signatures, then you have an opportunity to correct them. And the clerk will notify you and tell you how to correct them and when they have to be corrected by. So how to fix the issues. This is going to be online. The state is developing a system for you to track any issues. Well, actually to track your absentee ballot so you can see when it was mailed, if it was received, if there were any issues, and then how to correct those. The whole system, I think, will be operational by the end of the year. It's not operational just yet, but when it is, you'll be able to find out all these things. Was your ballot received? Were there issues? How to fix them? And you'll be able to sign up to receive this information either by text or email. So be watching for that. So the next enhancement to absentee ballot voting is that in the past, everybody's ballot had to be received by the clerk by 8 o'clock on election day. Now that's true for almost all voters, but for voters who are overseas or the military, as long as their ballot is postmarked by the end of election day and received by the clerk within 6 days, that ballot can be counted. Any questions about absentee voting improvements? They're pretty straightforward. Thanks.
Oops. All right, there were a few improvements to drop boxes. And as Barb had said, you can return your absentee ballots and applications either by mail or by dropping them at your clerk's office or by dropping them in a drop box. And so a drop box is a secure locked structure that voters can use to return these applications or finished ballots. So every city or township must have at least one secure drop box. Larger cities and townships must have one for every 15,000 registered voters, and they must be distributed equitably, and they must be accessible, including to those with disabilities. And so places like downtowns and public buildings are good places for those drop boxes in the larger cities and communities. Communities that already have the required number of drop boxes don't need to add any more, but they can if they want to. And then for locations of drop boxes, you can go to michigan.gov/vote. So you can't use just any drop box around the state or the county. You need to go to the drop boxes that are within your voting jurisdiction. So for example, a voter who's registered in Park Township can use any drop box within Park Township, but they can't use the one in neighboring Holland. Clerks are really good. If you drop your ballot in the wrong jurisdiction's drop box, they'll work together often behind the scenes to get the ballot to the right clerk so that it can be counted. But on election day, it gets really, really busy for those clerks. And so if you do that on election day, it might not get where it needs to go. So pay attention, be sure to use the right drop box, or just throw it in the mail. So drop boxes must be accessible 24/7 during the 40 days prior to an election and up to 8 p.m. on election day. And they are secure. They must be securely locked, bolted down, and designed to prevent the removal of anything from that drop box except by authorized individuals. So some drop boxes are already subject to video surveillance as well, and by January of 26, all drop boxes will be subject to video surveillance. So Barb's going to talk about what's coming up next. Oh, questions? Yes.
Last year, or a couple years ago, I don't know, last year, my husband was putting ballots in the drop box, and there was a pickup hanging out in the parking lot, and they were just kind of watching people as they were putting their stuff in the drop box. So what do you do in a case like that besides put your ballot in the box?
Yeah, right, you put your ballot in the box, but if you consider that harassment or intimidation, call that hotline. Oh, another question.
This just goes back all the way up to the fundamental right to vote. I was
sure.
just curious if you know the reason why incarcerated individuals cannot vote.
while they're incarcerated. They can be cleared after incarceration, and they'll be able to do that, but do you have any more of an answer, either Tina or Jim?
It's
About why-
Michigan law that if someone serving a sentence cannot vote.
Yeah, so, Michigan law. We
Yeah.
don't know the reason behind it.
We can serve in office, but we can't vote.
You could be on parole. you
That's
can
insane,
be
isn't it?
Being held,
Right.
but not.
Yeah.
So we need a
sentenced,
law
but if you were
change
serving
to
a
allow,
sentence, you
Yeah, maybe so,
okay,
yeah.
thank
Contact
you.
your
This is always like
representative.
scratches my head.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
interesting. Yeah,
Thank you.
Someone that's currently incarcerated can't serve in office.
Mm-hmm.
actually they
Actually, they
can.
can.
They can serve in office?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, Lord.
surprisingly.
Yeah, so it's always been like just a little
How would they do
mind
that?
bender for
Yes,
me.
That's a little strange, yeah.
That
I
could
think
be,
it's state
that
by
could
state.
be, yeah.
It's state by state.
And I think it depends if it's a felony.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, hi.
So you talked about the 6 days that are for military to get there?
Yes.
Okay, so does that mean we're going to have to wait an additional 6 days to get the results of our elections?
Yeah, to get specific results, sometimes the quantity that they expect isn't enough to sway the election.
The law says that the canvass boards can't certify the election until after those 6 days have expired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the 27th, we have to wait until Monday. We can canvass the ballots on
Yeah.
the assumption that you won't get very many.
Right.
I think the last election we had 3, and so we just went back a couple of days later to sign the certifications.
Okay, thanks.
There's another question I had about the signatures on the absentee ballots.
Yes.
If the clerk calls you on election day and say, we can't read your signature, you forgot, do you still have the 6 days to essentially cure that ballot by signing it?
I don't think so. I think you have to cure your ballot on the day of, right?
Well, if you didn't find out about it till the day of election.
Yeah, if they called you after 8 o'clock and said.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
You couldn't do anything about it until the next day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we don't have any clerk in this room who can answer that question, do we?
I wonder if they even do that. Do they call people and say something?
Yeah, if they can.
Occasionally they
Yeah.
do, yeah.
Wow.
There was a ballot in the November election from Holland that we waited 3 days for somebody to come to cure it.
No kidding.
And so, but we were still canvassing it, we were still in that day period. of
Certification
canvass.
phase, yeah.
So that, but I don't know if that's the case with that 6-day thing or not.
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, we'll have to ask a clerk.
He would know.
That's right. Justin would know for sure.
Better know.
All right, I'm going to hand it over to Barb.
Other questions? So what's coming next? Several elections. In 2024, there are 4 elections for us in Ottawa County. First of all, there's the presidential primary coming up at the end of the month. Absentee ballots have already been sent out. Early voting will start on the 17th of February. Then in May, there's a special election. The 2nd District has a recall, and the candidates running are Lucy Ebel and Christian Kleinmans. In addition, there are proposals. So Holland Charter Township has a millage, and then there are bond issue proposals in Hudsonville, West Ottawa, and Zeeland. So Ottawa County voters will vote on those. Then in August, it's the primary for all the other races except the presidential. And the absentee ballots will be coming out by June 27th, so the end of June. And early voting starts July 27th, so the end of July. Then the general election is November 5th, and absentee ballots will come out September 26th, so the end of September. And early voting will start on October 26th. So even though the election is in November, there's lots of activity before then. So we thought that we should include some slides about the primary, because primary elections are really critical, as we know here. Where one party is strongest in an area, the winner of the state Local primaries in August are likely the winners of the November election. And the turnout for primaries is generally quite low, so I think the importance of that election we really need to emphasize today. This is your opportunity to choose who will be on the November ballot. And in Michigan, you do not need to be a member of any political party to vote in a primary. Every voter can vote. So, sorry, a pretend ballot here. Who gets to vote? All registered voters. You must select one party. You don't need to be a member of the party, but you have to select on the partisan side of the ballot. I'm going to sit this down.
I don't have enough hands. So this is our pretend ballot, and this is the Oak Party. This is the Elm Party. So if you're filling out your primary ballot, you can only vote on one side or the other, on this side of the ballot. But turn your ballot over, because often there are nonpartisan offices or proposals on the other side. But just stay in your lane on the primary. And again, be sure you do vote. And for the presidential primary in Michigan,
You have to choose actually the ballot. So it's not even that both are on one ballot. You have to choose which ballot you want, Republican or Democratic. So what's the difference between the primary and the general? In the primary election, Republicans are running against Republicans, Democrats against Democrats. It's really an election to choose who is going to represent the party in the general election. In the general election, each party's candidate is running against all the other candidates. And that winner determines who will occupy the office. You can only vote for one party on the partisan section of a primary ballot. However, in the general election, you can go back and forth. You can split your ticket. You can choose the candidate that you think would be best for that office, no matter what the party affiliation is. And as we said before, there may be nonpartisan proposals on the ballot, and that's true on the general election as well. So for the presidential primary, like we said, you have to choose which ballot you want, the Democratic or the Republican. And the clerk will send you a request asking you which one you want. If you're on that permanent voting absentee ballot list, you'll have to answer that question every 4 years. And you can switch back and forth. You don't have to be a member of any party, and voting for that party doesn't make you a member of that party. It's just who you want to vote for. So now, as a kind of review, there are 3 ways to vote: absentee, in person, or early voting for state and federal elections. And for more information about your ballot, you can actually see what's on your ballot. You can see the answers from the candidates, and you can read about proposals. They're all posted on vote411.org. So, your vote is your voice, and we encourage you to use it. For more information about elections, please visit our website or any of our partner organizations. And thank you for coming tonight. Yes, Tina.
Barb, just a reminder, on those 3 ways, for the special May election, Ottawa County has decided, we don't have to, and so Ottawa County will not be having early in-person voting for the May election. So that will go down to 2.
Good reminder.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does everybody understand what Tina just said? No early voting for May, but there is early voting for the February, the August, and the November elections.
Right.
So the successful passage and implementation of these new voting rights under Proposal 2 would not be possible without the engagement of passionate citizens like yourselves. So thank you to each one of you. If you want more information about what we discussed tonight, you can ask one of us, visit our website, or go to michiganvoting.org. There's lots of good information. And we have handouts in the back in case you didn't see them when you came in. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
Is it possible to get, when you have to pick a party, is it possible to change that after you pick?
You can cure it if it's before election day. You can say to your clerk, hey, I didn't want to do that after all. Tear that ballot up and they'll give you a new one.
Yeah.
Or even just show up and vote in person? Or you would only still get that?
So
For the primary, I mean.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so if you're voting absentee, you check that box on your absentee application, they'll send you the ballot you asked for. If you decided, I don't want to vote for that party anymore, you contact your clerk. They'll spoil that ballot for you and then send you another one.
But you can take your ballot up to the day of voting.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
spoil it
you
as
can
well,
spoil
right?
it there on voting day as well.
You can't vote twice.
Yeah, right.
well, that's
Right.
Contrary to popular
Yes.
belief.
I recently read, I apologize, I tried to find the source before I came tonight and I couldn't. But it seems to me there's a group that's trying to reverse the constitutional amendment. Can you address that?
Yeah, I've heard about that too, and I don't know where they are in the process. I think that because it went into the Constitution, they would have to have a new constitutional amendment that would, basically overwrite the one that the citizens passed in 22.
So you'd have to do petitions,
Yeah.
get it on the ballot. Any other questions? Well, thank you. We're really glad to see you and see your involvement in your listening faces.
Thanks so much. Thanks everybody for coming out. We'll also, I think we have some ZAC cards, some information you're welcome to take, and then we're gonna have a sign up over at the table. For anyone who'd like to receive more information about the League of Women Voters or about ZAC, if you put your name and email, we'll make sure we get you some more information. Right? Yeah.
If people want to sign up for who are in other districts, can they do that too and be pointed where they might want to go? Sure.
Yeah. Do that for sure.
Do you have counterparts in different parts of the county? Like there's the Zeeland Area Action Committee.
Yeah,
others?
yeah. Actually, so there's similar groups that have formed in most every district at this point, and we'd be glad to try to connect you with them if you're in another district. Have a great night. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.